based on a true story.
Do you have a visual? No visual. I'm hit the post. Division A. Division A left to Division A side.
Right before the call came in, we were sitting at the kitchen table. We had just finished lunch, and we were just getting ready to get up and start cleaning the kitchen. And it was about 12:45 when the call came in. It came in as a standard vehicle fire. There were no special circumstances in the dispatch, so we prepared to go on a call involving a car fire.
Engine 811 South Elm Street, crossroad East Bragg Street and East McCulloch Street, responding on a vehicle fire.
And we dressed accordingly. As a matter of fact, I was planning more for it to be outside, so I left my job shirt on, which I wouldn't do normally on a structure fire, but I had on a long sleeve t-shirt and then my job shirt and then my turnout gear on top of that. Normally on a structure fire I would have at least gotten rid of the job shirt, and that's what we were preparing for, was just a run-of-the-mill car fire. We were out on the bay floor getting dressed for the call, putting our turnout gear on, and communications came on and advised us that the call was going to be upgraded, or that the call actually involved the car was inside a building, inside a structure, and at that point they upgraded the call to a structure fire response. That we had not left the station, as I recall correctly. We were still in the process of getting on the truck, and so that upgrade, of course, added a bunch of other units on a typical fire response at that point.
One of the vehicle fire, they're now reporting it's inside a building, 69 Delta 3, structure fire. Attack 14. Car 2. Car 2.
Good, heavy EMS, also Air 1, dispatch.
Central. Car 2, Station 5, Station 7, ladder 11. If you're small, engine 11 en route, call's been reconfigured to a structure fire. 811 South Elm Street, crossroad East Bragg and East McCulloch Street, 69 Delta 3, structure fire. Attack 14.
For the initial call was a single company response for a car fire. Didn't give any information as to involving a building, near a building, anything like that. It was just just an easy call for a single company responding to a car fire. So at that time, it didn't. I listened to it, of course, because it was in my battalion, but it didn't pique any interest other than any other call. After about 30 or 40 seconds or so, the call got upgraded to a structure fire because the car fire was now involving a building or in close proximity to a building. At that point, I was on the highway. I exited at the next exit, turned around, and came back the quickest route back to the call.
Trip Engine 4, it's Engine 4's first due territory, and they were out on another call. So we really came down Elm Eugene Street, and when we turned off right onto Elm Street, we had just made that turn and we're getting ready to go under a railroad trestle, and I looked up ahead and I could see a huge amount of smoke, and I realized at that point that we were probably dealing with more than just a car fire, even in a building. So at that point, I did get on the TAC channel and just advised all the responding units that there was a great deal of smoke in the area from that turn off of Elm Eugene Street onto Elm. And my thinking was, you know, we're going on a car fire even though it's in a building, but the amount of smoke tells us that it's really more than that at this point. And so I'm just kind of trying to let everybody know that there's going to be more than what we maybe planned for. And of course, that was probably the extent of our conversation until we pulled up to the hydrant that I decided that we would get.
All units responding to Elm Street, be advised we have heavy smoke showing from the turn off of Elm Eugene. Engine 11, 1023, we have a single-story masonry commercial structure. We have heavy smoke showing from the Division A side. Engine 11 laying a line, going to offensive mode, assuming command.
We're copy heavy smoke showing Division A side laying a line, assume command.
Well, we pulled up, as we're approaching the building, we pulled up to a hydrant, and one of the crew members on the back, either Frank or Joe, asked me, do you want us to get this hydrant? And I said, yes, let's get this one. I knew the hydrant was there. It was on the right side of the street. We weren't going to shut the street down, and I could see the building up ahead, and I could see with the amount of smoke that there was going to need to be water brought to the fire. So it just made sense for us to go ahead and get that hydrant and establish water supply right off the bat. So Frank got off the truck and he caught the hydrant, and of course after he's wrapped the hydrant, we pull on down the street, and it's actually not the hydrant that's closest to the fire. I didn't realize at the time that there was one up closer to the building, but it ended up working out in the long run. But we laid off our supply line, and as soon as we got there, I had Vicky stop the truck. We're kind of essentially in front of the structure, and with the amount of smoke, I can see fire coming from the AB corner. So with the amount of smoke, I said, you know, let's get our 2.5. And of course, I reported the conditions that we had. I assumed command. I let everybody know that we were laying a supply line so that they would know we would have water there, and also advised them we were pulling a 2.5 because, again, I'm trying to let people know there is a significant amount of smoke, a significant amount of fire that's beyond our 1 3/4 capabilities, most likely.
I'm on scene. I'm assuming command, assigning you fire attack. I see heavy fire on Division A side. Do you have you made entry yet?
We're in the process right now. We are deploying a 2.5 inch. Get ready to head in. Hey, whoever's in the hydrant, go ahead and bring water.
All right, 10-4, copy 2.5 inside.
And we pulled the line off and advanced it to an opening, a big, it was a roll-up door opening where the vehicles, this was an automotive repair shop. Actually, the structure itself was divided into 3 businesses. There were essentially 2 automotive repair shops and a medical equipment device company in the front of the structure. And the fire had started on the Division B side, or in that part, which was one of the auto repair businesses. So we took our 2.5 inch line, we advanced to the door, and again there was a big roll-up door, and the roll-up door, there was so much fire coming out that we couldn't get in initially without starting our attack from actually the opening. So we started that. It was myself and firefighter Joe Denny. Ladder 7 had Captain Shane Boswell, Brian Baishman, and Matthew Clapp on their line. And we all entered the structure, and at some point shortly thereafter, the engineer from Ladder 7, Phil Roof, joined Joe Denny and I on our line. Ladder 7 went ahead of us, and they were off, as I recall, up to the right. There was a huge amount of fire still inside because we had just essentially gotten it, like I said, to where we could make entry in to the beginning or the initial part of the structure, and we were still working our way in. Ladder 7 got up further in. They were up near, I think, the actual where the fire started, and we were still essentially in the middle of this area, this big bay of the automotive repair shop. And there was a lot of fire, just kept coming across the ceiling, kept reigniting. You know, as we would hit it, it would still just reignite. Well, we kept working after it, or kept spraying it, and I had the thermal imager, and so I kept checking the condition to see where our fire was, where our heat flows were, and it looked like, you know, visibility got really bad. It was bad when we entered, but it got worse. And I remember firefighter Denny asking me how the ceiling looked, and I looked through the thermal imager and I said, well, I think we've got the fire down to a, you know, where we can go forward some more. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw more fire to our right, but also behind us, and it looked like that fire might come behind us and cut off our exit to the door. So the last thing I said to Joe was, I said, we need to move over there and get that fire before we go any further in. So essentially we were in the middle of the structure. We were underneath one of the steel beams at that time, I do remember. And the last move we made was to move back to the right and a little bit back toward the opening that we had come through to extinguish that fire. And it was at that point, just seconds later, that the roof came in on us.
From Ladder 11 FEO, CJ, you need anything else up there? All units, the middle building, the roof is about to cave in. Stay out of the middle building. We're going to have to make a hole cut on this right side.
Alright, command copy, you're cutting a hole on the right side of the building. Go ahead.
10-4, the roof is, looks like it's about to fall in on this middle building. We're going to stay off of it.
Command from safety. Got heavy fire, Division B side, Division B side. Also, I would go ahead and get everybody off the roof. Nobody on the roof.
Alright, 10-4, ventilation from command, you copy.
Silver County Medic 61, we're on scene. How would you like to approach and where would you like us to stage?
Medic 61, stay off tag 14, stage anywhere you can. Ventilation command, let me know when you're off the building. I see you coming out.
Mayday, Mayday. Call the second alarm. We got a Mayday. We got a Mayday. Everybody clear the thing. We had a plan for the building. We got a Mayday. Rescue. Division B side. Division B side. Mayday. This is Engine 11. On fire attack. Captain, shoot arches down. Please, Captain, shoot arches.
Command copy is Mayday. Captain Tudor is down. Do you have a visual on him?
Mayday, ladder 7. We're on fire attack. Engine 11. Got a roof fire. Station from command, we got an eye visual on them. Get EMS up here also.
Ladder 7, this is command. I copy your Mayday. I copy you have a visual on him.
a visual on him?
I did not see the ceiling coming in, but I just felt it. You know, at one point we're in an atmosphere there's a little visibility. We can see somewhat, but as soon as the roof came down, everything just went black. And I wasn't really sure what had hit us at first. I felt the impact before I saw anything, and I really wasn't sure what had happened initially. And it was like a two-punch. The first part of the impact was, you know, as I recall, right on my head and my right shoulder, and that kind of pushed me to the ground. But then it kept coming. Like the second part of the collapse, the roof just kept settling, and I found myself on my back with my arms pinned beside my body, and I was unable to move anything except maybe my lower legs and my feet. My initial reaction was to try to reach for the radio and call a Mayday, and I couldn't I had the radio strap on, and I couldn't reach the radio by my side. I couldn't move my arms to reach the mic that was up near the top of the turnout gear. So essentially I was stuck there and couldn't do anything. And of course my first notion after that point was to hold my breath, because we're trained to conserve our air. So I took a big breath and I held that. And while I'm holding my breath, I hear Joe Denny call the Mayday. And of course, even lying there under that roof, it was comforting to hear him call the Mayday, because it let me know two things. It let me know that Joe was not under the roof with me. And of course, I say the roof. At that point, I'm still not sure if it's a roof or a wall. I just know there's been a collapse of some sort, and I don't really know what is actually on top of me. But it did let me know that he was not there with me, and it also let me know that he knew where I was at. He knew my location because he used my name in his Mayday. So I heard that, and of course the roof is still continuing to settle across my chest. It's getting heavier and heavier, and I start to feel the burns. And it was at that point I thought, I didn't hold my breath as long as I could, because I didn't want to let the air out and then gasp continuously and use up the air that I just saved by holding my breath. So I let that air out. Well, I didn't realize when I exhaled that would be the only breath I had, because when I let that air out and went to take my next breath, one of the beams across my chest must have compressed my low pressure airline, and when I went to get my second breath, the mask just sealed to my face. And so at that point I'm not able to move, so I just literally try to just keep breathing through that mask. And as I'm doing that, the seal on the mask is just getting tighter and tighter around my face, creating this vacuum. And I'm feeling the burns, and I see a little more fire start up over to my left, and it's pretty close. And it was shortly after that I heard the saws crank up. I heard chainsaws crank up, and I thought, the last thought I remember having was that those saws are going to take too long because I don't have any air. At the time I didn't realize, I thought perhaps I was out of air, my air had leaked out. I didn't realize that my line was crimped. It was only after the next day in the hospital, when they told me after they got me out that my mask was free flowing, because I just thought maybe handling the 2.5, maybe I misjudged how much air I had, maybe there was a line cut, something happened. But they said when they pulled me out and removed my mask, it was free flowing, although I was no longer breathing at that point. I don't recall much of the event, or any of the event after the chainsaws, and my last thought about the time and it would take for that to work. But they said it took 6 minutes to get me out. And as I said, when they pulled me out of there, I was in respiratory arrest. and of course it was transported. They started emergency care right there on the scene and transported me into the hospital, and that's the last thing I remember from the scene. Was just, I don't remember the transport or anything like that. The last thing I remember was laying on my back, pinned with my arms, the mask glued to my face, and hearing the saws run. That's the last waking moment I have at the scene.
When they pulled Sterling out, I saw one of my good friends dead. He was not moving, obviously. At that point, everybody that was close that wasn't in an air pack started working on Sterling. Some that were in an air pack started working on Sterling. We were trying to get EMS up to him, but what I felt was I saw one of my good friends die that day. So it was not obviously a good feeling. I knew when the guys started working on him and EMS started working on him, I knew that he had his air pack on. I knew that he had his mask on. We found out later that he did run out of air, not in his air pack, but the hose line got pinched, so he didn't have air, but he did have his mask on. I knew that he wasn't breathing because they were bagging him, but nobody was doing chest compressions. So at that point, it wasn't that I was optimistic. I don't think I wanted to believe at that point that he was going to die, that they weren't doing chest compressions on him. I knew that he still had a pulse, at least at that second.
The fire at 811 Elm Street was in a single-story, multi-occupancy building. It had been added on to. Its life started out in the early 40s as a automotive dealership. It changed occupancies a few times, but mostly it was centered around automotive repair. The fire started out on a bad note. There were some issues with the occupants of the automotive repair section. They were from Western Africa, so there was a language barrier. There were some also cultural issues. They don't like uniformed people showing up, so they tried to fight the fire as long as they could before they actually decided that they did need to call somebody, because they didn't want intrusion in on their building. So we were behind the 8-ball to start with, because there was such a long time between the initial fire and when 911 was actually called. We actually determined the cause of the fire was one of the automotive repairmen had a car up on a lift. It was a Ford Focus. It had an issue with the fuel cell itself. The fuel pump had gone bad, so they were trying to take the fuel cell off the car. When it started coming off, it still had fuel in it. He dropped it and it hit the ground. In his haste to try to get something to catch the fuel that was coming out of the vehicle and it had spilled, he knocked over a incandescent work lamp, and when that bulb shattered, when it hit the ground, the spark on the incandescent bulb was actually our ignition source for the fire.
Lessons learned. You can't treat a commercial structure fire like a residential structure fire, and initially I think that's what we did. The Greensboro Fire Department, I feel, like all other fire departments across the nation, we're a good department. We handle residential structure fires very well. We don't have the number of commercial structure fires to say that we do that very well. Obviously, we didn't do it well that day. We treated it like a residential structure, even though we took big hose in to begin with. We deployed those hoses, and our tactics were based on residential attacks and not a commercial.
Well, one of the big things, and it sounds like simple, but for instance, the radio straps, where all people were not required to wear radio straps. We found out in this instance that several of the firefighters that were involved in the collapse lost their radios. And this could have been very, very detrimental. But we have looked at that. We've implemented it now to where it's mandatory that you wear your radio straps. We went into the training part of how to do it so that this part won't ever happen again on a fire scene. The positive things we learned was that the training that we had done prior to with our SCBA training literally helped save the lives of several of the firefighters that were involved in the collapse.
Well, any fire department in the country hopes that they never hear three words on an incident: Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. On January 30th of last year, we heard those words, and our department was faced with a potential crisis. Due to the diligent work of our men and women, all the firefighters were able to be rescued from that incident and have subsequently returned to work and been able to return to somewhat normal duty. We were very blessed in that occurring. Our challenge after the incident is to determine what happened and how we can improve moving forward. We did that internally. We had an OSHA investigation as well. And we also hired a third-party company to come in and intensely review what we did, what worked well, and what we need to improve on. At this point, we're now trying to look at all the items that were recommended, and we're focused on 10 items that we're taking action on, have taken action on, are taking action on, and will take action on in order to improve the department. The positive is the resilience of the men and women of the Greensboro Fire Department. Many times when an incident like this occurs, it can really damage a department and the confidence and the ability. I have seen that our department has embraced it, the training, has embraced the incident, learned from it, and improved from it. And I really think that's the best outcome you can have in this situation. My hat goes off to Captain Sudworth and the other firefighters that were involved in the incident. They have maintained a positive attitude and a positive approach and continue to be very contributing members to our department. Our challenge now is to learn from the incident and be able to move forward and keep that from happening for us and for other fire departments in our state. We focus on training, we focus on equipment and safety in everything that we do. Because we have such a focus on that, it's easy to think that this type of incident would not occur to us. We're a Class 1 department, we're an accredited department, we're a strong, competent fire department. It did happen to us. It can happen to any fire department. And so I think this has been a humbling experience and a learning experience for men and women of the department. But I'm very proud of how they have stepped up and stepped forward to make us a better, stronger organization, using this instant of adversity to make us better. And that's what it's all about, continuous improvement.